Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 6th edition of the Redzone Review podcast. It has been a little bit since I've done a podcast, but if you're a follower of the YouTube channel, you should kind of be seeing I did some real-life videos for a little bit, and also you'll see that I made the top 100 from a podcast segment back to a video format. So if you're listening in audio and maybe aren't subscribed to my YouTube channel, which you should, subscribe there. The top 100 is going to be moving back to kind of just a video format, and no longer going to be a podcast segment. But also, as you can see on the screen, once again, if you're listening on audio, great. And I'm sorry you guys might have had, like a month delay, because you maybe weren't checking on my YouTube channel, but I have been uploading. And as you can see here, my socials on both Instagram and Twitter are at Riley Redzone, so you can follow those there. Today is going to be kind of an experimental one, a bigger one, you could say, or depending on one segment is either going to take shorter than I think it will, or it's going to be a really long time if I go in depth on it. So we're only doing 2 segments today, but the second one is going to be a long one. So you may be wondering, Riley, why are you wearing a Cowboys jersey? Well, that's because today our first thing we're going to do, which is why we have Brett Favre back there, and Tom Brady, is I'm going to be ranking my top 10 quarterbacks, not right now, of all time in the NFL. Yes, of all of them, I'm making a top 10 of all time right there. And also, I'm going to be predicting the Cowboys roster. I chose the Cowboys just because they're an NFC East team, so I'll start with the NFC East and make my way, through the NFC. And we're already less than a month away, so I might not get too many out, but hopefully I'm going to be using some on the podcast and some in video format, as I think it's kind of be fun. I'm not seeing many other YouTubers actually do that. And also, I just think it's going to be a fun one. Hopefully I'll get through some teams, just like the free agency grades. I got through 6 of them. Hopefully I can get through more. But with that being said, we're going to start with the top 10 NFL quarterbacks of all time. For me, at number 10, Fran Tarkenton. Fran Tarkenton spent most of his career with the Vikings, spent a little bit with the Giants, but everyone knows him as a Viking. And I had to include him on this list because he pretty much invented the scrambling quarterback. To be honest, if that didn't succeed, there's a chance Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, wouldn't have seen kind of the success that they have now. He kind of invented that scrambling quarterback position. Unfortunately, as a Vikings fan too, I can say he hasn't won any Super Bowls. The Vikings have not won any Super Bowls. But I think he revolutionized the game, and that's a very important thing. I think when a player changes the course of history in a sport, that's quite a big deal. So I think that he deserves some credit there. At number 9, Johnny Unitas. He's the original Johnny Football. So a little retro here. He played for the Colts mostly, and I just think he was kind of one of the original players to get the league going. And kind of like I said, there's not much film on him or anything, but very good player. I think just kind of almost like Fran Tarkenton too was one of the original players that kind of started the league to go. Now, the next 8 players are guys that I know a little bit more about and I can talk about a little bit more. So, starting at number 8, Aaron Rodgers. I have him at number 8. Now, before you get mad, Aaron Rodgers, talent-wise, especially if he wins another Super Bowl, he could end up in the top 5. But him only winning 1 Super Bowl right now kind of limits him a bit. I wouldn't be afraid to say, I could say it, out of the top 8 here, he's got, for sure, it could be the best, if not the top 3, talent-wise. I mean, he's got a great arm, he's got a decent amount of mobility. I want to see another ring, and unfortunately, I don't think it's his fault. It's more the organization not surrounding him with top receivers in a while, since they won that first Super Bowl. But I think they, we'll see if he can win another one, but I really think he can elevate himself up this list, but for now, I had to put him at number 8. But definitely in a few years, we make this again, he could be higher up there. At number 7 is Dan Marino. Now, once again, like Aaron Rodgers, which you might be saying, wow, Rodgers already has a ring, Marino didn't get any. I mean, that's part of you could say that I didn't put Marino higher because he does not have a ring. Probably one of the greatest players of all time to never win a championship, which is crazy. So for right now, I had him above Rodgers, definitely. Maybe at the end of Rodgers' career, he'll for sure move up to top 7. But for right now, with, everything that's in there, I think Marino is above. But like I said, he's not higher on this list because he does not have a Super Bowl, which is super important. So that's why he's not higher on this list. At number 6, John Elway. John Elway does have a Super Bowl. Obviously, you might remember the helicopter run. That was pretty cool. Also a decent general manager. I don't know, okay, got Peyton Manning to go there, and won a Super Bowl as a GM. But as a player, very good. Obviously, he declined playing for the Colts. He said, I'm not going to play for you. So he ended up being traded to the Broncos and had a successful career. Very good. He has the ring, which is why he's above Marino. So for John Elway, I ended up putting him 6, which is kind of surprising. Honestly, you'll see I have 3 kind of recent quarterbacks in the top 5 that definitely made me kind of think, wow, it's crazy that Elway's kind of slipping to 6, because at one point he was, I think, definitely top 5. Which, like I said, I put Drew Brees number 5 mostly because of accolades for him right now. He has the same amount of rings as an Elway, as a Rodgers, that type of thing. He does just have the 1 ring, but I think you look at his statistics, he's all-time leader in passing yards and I believe touchdowns. So, I mean, that's just crazy. And he's got it over Tom Brady, for example. Tom's still playing. That's why I didn't say Peyton. And Breeze has not been playing as long as Tom. So because of the accolades, he single-handedly made New Orleans a decent football team. He won them a Super Bowl, especially with Hurricane Katrina and everything that was happening during the time that he signed there. He revolutionized that franchise. So he definitely is very high up there. I don't know if I'll put him higher if he, once again, like Rodgers, if he wins another ring, he could make himself into the top 4, but I have there's a tier gap here for the top 4. Brett Favre at number 4, another one. Accolades, he had the record for quite a while, probably one of the best quarterbacks of the early 2000s, but same thing, only had, a ring, one ring, not too many, especially in the back half of his career. They didn't win a ring for the whole 2000 to 2010. They won it pretty early in his career, but then didn't do as much after. Still a great quarterback, but doesn't have that success. But he did definitely have the accolades. So I had to put him above Breeze, but not a top 1 because he didn't really have as many rings. And I think, honestly, he's the best player, but legacy-wise, in 20 years, I don't know if there's going to be as much to remember about Brett Favre. And Peyton Manning, I do have above Brett Favre. That was a relatively close one, but I did put Peyton number 3. He's got the stats, and he has 2 Super Bowls, which is very key. He won one with the Colts and the Broncos. Yes, he was kind of carried on the Broncos, you could say that. Yes, the defense carried him, specifically Von Miller and etc. But I do think that he does have both rings, and that's key. Was able to succeed in 2 different systems. Just very successful career. Obviously, if that injury didn't happen, we could see even more. And he also knew when to retire at the right time. But this is his ceiling, obviously. Even when he was playing, you knew he never was really going to take over the top spot. But he was very good during his play. Now, at number 2, this is where you think about a GOAT, right? That's Tom Brady. Okay, so that kind of spoils he's going to be number 1. But Joe Montana, until Brady started winning his last few rings, I'd say pretty much 5 years, pretty much since I've been around, but pretty much my whole life, I thought that Joe Montana was the greatest. He didn't, even when Brady had 5, I think at that point, I still thought Montana was the greatest of all time, just because he, I think, had a better clutch gene at the time. He had the clutch gene, had multiple rings, and I think he just was clutch. And I think that he had the best talent, I'll say, on this list. But because of the accolades, we had to give it to Tom. But I do think Joe Montana, best quarterback talent we've seen ever, and definitely thought he was the greatest for a very long time. Very long time. Then, obviously, number 1, Tom Brady. Now here's what I'm going to say. You would think now that he's number 1, he can't go back down. He's won 6 or 7, he's winning rings. He's literally Thanos with his Infinity Stones, but his rings. He has 6 rings. He has the accolade. Nobody else has that. He has as much as the franchise, the other franchise, the Steelers, has the most. Before the Patriots, they had the most Super Bowls at 6, and Brady alone has 6 as a player. That's just crazy. But I am gonna say it's gonna be interesting. Obviously, you can't judge 2008 Brady versus 2020 Brady. But if the Bucs are terrible, and they are for the future, then you maybe think, maybe did he win the rings because of Belichick? I personally believe that Belichick and Brady are both great for their different reasons, but then you start to wonder, did Belichick kind of carry Brady? And I think we'll really see that. Like, he's number 1 because of the rings. Talent-wise, you think about it, right? Brady was a 6th round pick, which sounds crazy, but when you look at him, he doesn't have an ideal arm. He's not tall, right? He doesn't have the ideal build either, I'd say. He's just kind of there, but he's a competitor, which is what he needed to win, which is very key. That's very important when you're talking about a quarterback, but didn't have the overall talent. So I think it'll be very interesting to see what actually happens here. So that is going to be interesting to see what Brady can do in a Buccaneer jersey. Now, we're going to be talking about the Dallas Cowboys, okay? So, the Dallas Cowboy roster. Once again, I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I thought they wouldn't be a bad team to talk about first. So, the Dallas Cowboys. Here's the rules, okay? I'm trying to make this into a series, but here are the rules of my roster predictions. This roster prediction will only include players that are currently on the team. I will mention spots where teams should pick up a player, but the players that we're putting on here are players that are only on the team. Second of all, I'm going to be listing the players that made the team first. So when you see a position and it lists the players, you might say, oh, you're missing this player. You'll see him later in the video, or if you're listening on podcast, you'll hear his name later. Because I want to give the visual of who made the team, and at the end we'll list the practice squad, which, another big note, if you did not know, the NFL actually made it because of COVID and everything going on this year. It's going to be a weird season. So, they said that you can now have 16 instead of 10 players on your practice squad, which is very key. That's a game changer. You're going to see, because obviously going into this, there was a big concern. You're talking undrafted free agents that wouldn't have made the team. You're probably not making the team, especially with limited training camp this year. They just started within a month. You definitely, I think we're going to see veterans make the team more than these rookies. So I think that solved a lot, helping the extended practice squad. And not only does it give those guys a shot, it just, in case people get it, in case people, have a loved one get it and they need to go away for some time, it gives you more players opportunities to play. I think that's all the rules. Once again, you're going to be seeing only players that are currently on the team. I'll mention when they want upgrades. We're using the 16-man practice squad. We are only doing 53, not 55-man rosters, just like normal. We'll talk about the opt-outs, and then at the end, we'll talk about the cuts, and I do have a big surprise cut. I do. And that's going to save them a lot of money, so we'll discuss the cap situation. All that fancy stuff. So, with that being said, we're going to jump into here the Cowboys roster predictions. So, starting with their opt-out. So, these are players that decided they're not going to play this year because of COVID concerns. They don't want to get it, or maybe, they have some of these players have had maybe loved ones, they just had a child, or different scenarios per player. So we're going to talk about these guys who opted out. So starting at fullback, you may think, just a fullback. Well, in one way, the backup fullback's now going to get a job. He probably would have been cut anyways, without this. But Jamiz Alawale, who is a very good fullback, actually opted out of this season. So he is I'm not going to say he's going to be a huge impact missing out, but that's your starting fullback, so he is missing that. Maurice Kennedy was a off-season signing this year. Honestly, probably would have been the 5th or 6th corner, and honestly, he maybe even was the 7th best corner. So, just a depth piece. He's played for the Ravens and Jets. So, you signed him obviously for nothing, but you'll get him next year, so nothing crazy there. And then Stephen Guidry out of Southern Miss, he barely made my list of players for the draft to rank at wide receiver. He's like my 40th. So he's kind of just opting out, probably wouldn't have made the roster just to get some free money, which is a good move by him, to be honest. Not a bad move for him. So now we're going to be going to the first position, which is quarterback. So, looking at the quarterback position, obviously, we have Dak Prescott. So, Dak Prescott hasn't got his contract yet, but, like we talked in, I think, a previous podcast episode, he's a guy I would pay a little under $30 million for. Maybe $30 million. I'm not going to be giving him the bag, though. I would personally not do that, but we'll see what the Cowboys do. So, he's just he's above average, but I don't think he's a top, 5 or top 10 quarterback at all. Maybe, top 15. But then Andy Dalton, great move by the Cowboys. I was kind of shocked by Andy Dalton. I know he went to TCU, so it makes sense he wanted to stay in Texas, but great move by the Cowboys. I'm more surprised that Andy Dalton chose to go to Dallas instead of maybe looking for a starting job in Jacksonville, at the time New England, maybe Chicago, somewhere like that. I was kind of more surprised from his end. So from the Cowboys' end, that's a great move. You've got a top backup quarterback. Especially that I don't think Dak will opt out of, sit out. It's too late kind of for that, to hold out. But I think if that did happen, it was smart to do, because then you have a starting caliber, not a top one, but a starting caliber player at quarterback. And yes, I do have Ben DiNucci at quarterback here making the team. I personally was not a big fan of Ben here from James Madison University. I did not think he was going to get drafted, but I feel like he's a kind of player. I would not have drafted him, but if you put him on your practice squad, I feel like some other team will steal him, kind of. Maybe not to their active roster, but I feel like there's a chance a team would steal him. So, they're going to keep him on here. I personally did not like the draft choice, but in this scenario, I have them keeping. But he's definitely a player, like if a player becomes available at a different position, you might end up cutting Ben here to save a roster spot to end up putting him, on the practice squad. So, running back. Here's what I gotta mention. Ezekiel Elliott, it's great. We'll talk about that. But there definitely is a need here for depth. So, Ezekiel Elliott, you've probably heard a lot about Ezekiel. He's a great running back. That's all I'm really going to say right now. He's a top running back, great player, but Yeah, he's just really good. Obviously, they tried to hold out last year, but he came back. Tony Pollard, I like a lot. I really like Tony Pollard as a player. Definitely, it was a great draft choice last year, and he's there. You've got your 1-2 punch. Now, this is what I want to talk about. I was very surprised. They actually, within the past few weeks, they cut a third-string back, Jordan Chun, out of Troy. You probably have no idea who that is, but I thought they would keep him as their third. But they ended up cutting him, so now they're going to have to go with a rookie. They have 2 options. Darius Anderson out of TCU and Rico Dowdle out of South Carolina to be their third running back. The reason I said we're only going to be keeping players on this team right now is I think they need to go sign another running back, like a low-end one. You think last year, at one point they signed Alfred Morris. Obviously, I don't think he's NFL caliber anymore. But, like, Mike Weber. Maybe you've heard of him last year. He now is on the Chiefs. But he would have been a good third running back. But he's obviously gone. So now you're kind of choosing between Darius Anderson and Rico Dowdle. I personally chose Darius Anderson, so you'll see Rico Dowdle made the practice squad. But so those 2 are both options. I personally had a higher grade this year on Darius Anderson versus Rico Dowdle, but so I have Darius making the team. But that's once again like the Ben DiNucci place on the depth chart. Darius Anderson is not safe on this roster, so keep an eye out for that. And Siwo down here from TCU. So now you got Darius and Siwo from TCU. Siwo, I'm not going to say you got lucky, but kind of. If Jamiz Alawale does not opt out, he would be cut or put in the practice squad. But because Jamiz opted out, we got my man Siwo a job. So he is going to be staying on the Cowboys. He's got the fullback spot locked up, especially with how weak their third-string running back is right now. He's got himself a job. So congratulations to Siwo. He will be the starting fullback. So that was kind of a nice surprise roster make right there. That's kind of cool. Now a wide receiver. I'm going to say it, top trio in the league. If you're looking at trio, top wide receiver trio in the league. Obviously, Cooper and Gallup are not the number 1 duo, but you put Cooper, Gallup, and Lamb in the top 3. That's a great trio. It's number 1. Amari Cooper, really good. I think he's a top 40 player in this league. That's kind of a hot take. You'll see him in my top 100 still coming. He's still going to be on the list. Don't worry, he's going to make it. So that's kind of a hot take. I had him a lot higher than a lot of people did I guess, but I think he's really good. Michael Gallup, kind of a guy, had a breakout season last year. Really good. Now, I'll give a little fancy take here. Obviously, fancy will be happening this year for a lot of people. I am personally out on Michael Gallup as a fantasy player, if he's a top draft choice. I think what you sometimes have to realize in fantasy football is players will have their time of success, and then they'll have their way down. Let's say, for example, for me, the player I'm thinking about this year is last year I drafted Aaron Jones. He did really well for me. He had 16 touchdowns. Really happy about it. I'm not touching him this year. No way. With the A.J. Dillon drafting and all that stuff, it's time. I used him while he was good, and now he's kind of on his way down. I feel that not on his way down as a player, but more fantasy level. That's what I feel about Michael Gallup right now. I do not think he's going to have as good of a year. I think he's a really, really good player, definitely. But I don't think he's going to have the success like 1,000 yards. I don't think he's going to get there this year. If I'm wrong, you can mark it down. But I like CeeDee Lamb, though, a lot. CeeDee was my number 1 receiver in the draft, and he fell to the Cowboys. And this is what separates good teams. Obviously, once again, I'm not a biased Cowboys fan. I'm not a Cowboys fan. I may be wearing a Cowboys jersey, but I'm not a Cowboys fan. But what good teams do is they're not afraid to get better. You look at Cooper and Gallup. Amazing. You know what they said? Let's get some more firepower for Dak in there. CeeDee Lamb. That's a great pick for them, wearing the crazy number 88. But this is where I have an issue. The next three guys, they're fine. They can make the team as a 5th, 6th wide receiver, but I don't think any of these guys are as good as a 4th wide receiver. You need some more depth. Devin Smith kind of came back out of nowhere, to be honest. Was on the Jets for a while as a day 2 pick. Didn't really amount to much, so they ended up cutting him. But here he is now on the Cowboys, and it'll be the 4th wide receiver. He could make it as a 5th or 6th, but I personally don't love him where he is right now. But he's roster NFL capable, but I don't think he's a top player. Cedric Wilson barely made this list. You might be saying you should cut him. Definitely thought about it. Barely made it here. Barely. Specifically, you may be saying Ventel Bryant. If he did very well last year, especially as a special teams player. I like Ventel Bryant a lot, but the problem with him is he had a off-season incident, we'll just call it. He had, some off the field, like a charge. So he's definitely not going to be impressed. Now, the Cowboys, we've seen, they're willing to kind of go with these guys. Greg Hardy, Randy Gregory, those types of players. They're willing to kind of hold on to them. So don't worry, you'll see him on the practice squad. Could have made it, but I think kind of you got to get punished a little bit for that. I don't think the coaches are going to be super impressed with that, so I don't think he makes the final roster. But once again, Cedric Wilson, watch out. He could get cut. But for right now, he's on the roster. Because here's what you guys should see here. When you're on a team, it's better to right now save. Like, you might be saying, oh, then why didn't you put, I don't know, like a Paul Richardson or some receiver on this team? It's because you would keep your guys first to make sure they don't get stolen right away by another team, because there's a chance these guys would, and then you can let them go. Now, Joan Vea-Johnson as a 6th receiver. I do think he has a higher chance of making it than Cedric Wilson, but Cedric has more experience. But Joan Vea-Johnson, I'm not going to say a breakout. I'm going to call it a mini breakout. I don't know if you kind of know what I mean. It's not going to be a Michael Gallup breakout, but like you're going to see him make the team. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets some reps, maybe as a 4th receiver. Joan Vea-Johnson is a roster sleeper. Don't pick him in fantasy. Don't put him as a top 3. Obviously, they already have the best trio in the league. But I think you could see him involved in this offense. In worst case scenario, special teams. But I think he'll easily make the team, kind of as a sleeper. And I think he's going to succeed. So, watch out for Joan Vea-Johnson. Now at the tight end room, I have him keeping 3. I have Blake Jarwin. People want him to break out. I think he'll have more success over season 1 than what we've seen from him, but I'm not banking on him, to be honest. I'm not a huge Blake Jarwin fan. I think he'll be fine, but nothing special there, in my opinion. Dalton Schultz now will get an opportunity as a second tight end choice here. I think that's about his ceiling as a second tight end. That's a good spot for him. Maybe can get some good blocking there. Now, Blake Bell, obviously experienced. They brought him in on the contract. Did not love it. I didn't like the Blake Bell signing. He just is kind of, I think, bounced around the whole league. He's been on the Niners. He's been on the Vikings. He's been on the Jags, I'm pretty sure. He's been on the Chiefs, and now he's on the Cowboys. So why is he bouncing all around? I think he's a decent run blocker, so it's fine to bring him in, but I don't think that you needed to really commit to him in free agency. That was one of their first signings. Blake Bell. Wow. That's but that's not a splashy signing, but it's a good one. He'll make the team easily, but I didn't love that signing. Now tackle. This is where it gets interesting. We've got Tyron Smith, really great player. I still had him in my top 100. Really good. La'el Collins. I just saw an article, though, today, as I'm recording this, that he might miss some time. That I'm kind of going to assume, still for this video's purpose, that he is not going to be out too long. For example, he's not going to be on injured reserve. If he is, that changes everything, because the depth behind him is not spectacular. I'm going to first touch on Brandon Knight. Because this video, I'm more talking about these depth players. Tyron Smith, great player. Lyle Collins, great players. I could go crazy in depth on them, but I kind of want to talk about these bottom of the roster guys. Brandon Knight, excellent swing tackle. Great. Can play tackle, and I think he could play guard, honestly, as kind of a depth spot, but excellent swing tackle. That's why you have a third tackle on your team. Very good there. I think that is very exciting for them to see him develop. Now, Cameron Erving. I even have this card. This card right there is signed by Cameron Erving. But, so I even have a memorabilia of him. But he's not amazing. First round, I cannot believe he was a first-round pick by the Browns. Of course the Browns would take him. But then he's been on the Chiefs. And now, what's crazy, you might think, why is he still in the Chiefs deal? He was not listed on the Cowboys.com. That's where I got, these photos to show you, which, let me know, guys, if you're listening on audio, if you want to check out the video version. I have pictures of each player, just for kind of them in their uniform smiling and whatever. If you guys want to see it of them on the field and put it into a square, let me know. But Cameron Erving was not even listed on the Cowboys roster. But basically, I was going through it, and I realized, wait, do they only have like 3 decent tackles? And I remembered, they signed Cam Erving. Had to double check on Google. Yes, he is on the Cowboys, but it's kind of concerning that he's not on the Cowboys website. So, Everson Griffin is, who they just signed a few days ago, but Cameron Erving is on there. So that's a little concerning. But I feel they won't cut him because they just signed him to a contract this year. But once again, Brandon Knight, watch out for him as a nice swing tackle. Third string tackle. Great. Guard, Zack Martin, top 50 player. Just put him in my most recent top 100 video. Really good. Always been good. Really, really well. Connor Williams. As a coming out of Texas, I really thought he was going to be a tackle, like a left tackle. But he's transitioned to guard really well. I think he's a nice, just middle of the road starter. He could play tackle. I think at this point he's transitioned to guard, but I definitely thought when he was coming out of college he was going to play tackle, but he did play guard, and that honestly wasn't a terrible move. He's pretty good. You've got Zack at right, and then you have Connor Williams at left guard. And then I have them keeping Connor McGovern out of Penn State last year as a third string guard / center kind of swing guard. He's good. I definitely thought they drafted him a little high last year, but he can play center and guard, which is nice, I guess. So you'll take that. But just kind of there. Center, obviously Travis Frederick retired. That was huge this offseason. So I have been keeping 2. I have Joe Looney, who played last year when Frederick was out. I remember when that was a big thing. People were like, the Cowboys are not going to, because they didn't have Travis Frederick, but Joe Looney was decent, and now I love the Tyler Biadasz pick. I love that draft choice. Might have been one of my favorite picks in the draft. He can play center and guard, and I think he's really good. Definitely a steal to get him that late in the draft. Was really, really good pick. The Cowboys had one of the best drafts this year, so that was a great choice. So that was the offensive line, and now we're going to be moving on to the defense. So, defensive ends. Okay, I did not put Randy Gregory, who is suspended, on this list. I think I was going to, but then the Everson Griffin signing made me change things. So, DeMarcus Lawrence is, in my opinion, still a top 100 player. So, he's a great... he's kind of a low-end star, kind of to me. He's an edge rusher 1. Everson Griffin, great signing by them. Way to go scoop him up. That was a great move. Really well. Especially because Aldon Smith, I have him making the roster. He could play, but he hasn't played in a few years. He might be a little rusty. So, great move to go and bring Everson Griffin in. Like I said, Aldon Smith, he'll make it, but it's definitely, he's got a little rust on. Now Bradley and I was also great pick. They got him in the 5th round. I thought he was going to go 3rd round. That was a beautiful selection by the Cowboys. So I have him making the roster. I think that was a great choice. Now, here's where you might be saying, why did you choose Joe Jackson over Randy Gregory? Well, here's my logic to this. Randy Gregory is technically not even on the roster right now. He's technically still suspended. So, he's not guaranteed to even be on this team. He might be out the whole year. So, because of that, for this video's purpose, I went the conservative route, which was keeping a player that did very well as a rookie last year. And also my other concern is Joe Jackson. I believe if you keep him on the practice squad, I do believe he would be picked up by another team on their active roster. I really do. So, and this is kind of one of those, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this segment, that he's one of those players that if you let him go, he's gonna go somewhere else. So it's better to keep him for now. If Randy Gregory does come back, then you move him to the practice squad. But to start, I think you keep him on the active roster. So this is where I'm considering Tyrone Crawford a D tackle instead of a DN. But even so, that's my surprise cut. You'll see him later in the video, but I cut Tyrone Crawford specifically for one reason. But you'll see him later. So, at defensive tackle, the top two are both signings. You had Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe, so they basically stole the defensive tackles from Carolina. So, those are both great players. I think both of them are very good signings there. Dontari Poe is on the PUP list, but he should be back, and I think he'll be good. But worst case scenario, Antwaun Woods, just like last year, can fill in for a little bit. So, if you need to, you can play him. I think I have him. You know, he's a third in this team. I think he definitely could be a DT2, if not even a DT1 on some other teams. Now, Neville Gallimore. Love that pick. Once again, Cowboys did a good thing. Once again, I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I love their draft. They did their thing where they are not afraid to get better. They already had, as you can see on this, 3, and if you consider Tyrone Crawford, 4 starting defensive tackle caliber players. But they decided to get Neville Gallimore. Great choice. That was amazing. Guaranteed roster, in my opinion. Now, once again, like Joe Jackson, Tristan Hill, they spent a 3rd-round pick on this guy. Did not perform well last year. But once again, one of the situations, I don't think they let him go quite yet. I could see it next year if they cut him. But this year, I think you got to hold on one more year, see what he's got. But kind of another one of those, yes, he did not do good last year, but I think another team would take him if it ends up happening where he would be cut. I do think another team would end up stealing him, which would be not good for the Cowboys, because then it's like they wasted an early pick on him. So, once again, you'll see Tyrone Crawford later, but that was my surprise cut. Linebackers. This is where I'm kind of making a bold move. I like teams to keep 6, but just with the talent they have, I have them keeping 5. I think they should bring another linebacker in. I love Jalen Smith. I'm wearing his jersey right now. Great player. Leighton Vander Esch, besides the injuries, really good as well. Obviously got injury concerns, so Sean Lee was amazing. Now I think he's still starting caliber, but he's on his way down, so you have to be careful there. But then Joe Thomas, he's a good player. He was on the Packers. He's a good player. I like him as a second middle linebacker, but kind of a low-end one. I feel like he would be better as kind of a 4th or 5th linebacker, kind of. But that obviously is not the case here. But then we have Justin March, a.k.a. Justin March Lillard. I put him in over Luke Gifford because of his experience in the system. But definitely a player that could be replaced. So watch out for that as well. Now, corner. I also made a bold move here. You'll see at the bottom. Chido Awuzie is a up-and-coming player. I nearly this year made a breakouts video. He would have been my breakout, probably, for the Cowboys. Chido Awuzie. He's pretty good, up-and-coming. Loved the Trayvon Diggs pick. Excellent choice there. He's going to be starting corner day 1. Loved it. Anthony Brown. he was kind of a player where you needed to keep him around, but he's not a top player. Definitely, I think they overpaid him a little, but you wanted him back. And Jordan Lewis, kind of a player, I think they'll end up not letting him go, but letting him walk in free agency. He's just kind of been there, so you keep him on the team this year. Reggie Robinson II, too high of a draft choice to put him on the practice squad or cut, but did not like that choice too much. I think he, for me, was a 5th or 6th round player. Maybe if you reach, it's a late 4th, but they took him very early 4th. So I did not like that choice. But Daryl Worley, if it's any other team and he's their 6th corner, I would cut him. But once again, like I mentioned earlier, he's had some character concerns, but the Cowboys have been willing to keep players with character concerns. So barely makes that team. But that's another one. If a linebacker opens up, if another guard opens up, a running back opens up in the market, you could see Daryl Worley be cut. So, safety, we've got Clinton-Dix, who they signed this offseason, keeps bouncing between teams, but I do think he makes this team and will be a starting safety. Then you've got Xavier Woods, up-and-coming player, another breakout candidate. Very good. I think he's going to be a future. Now, Donovan Wilson did very good when he played last year as a rookie. I could see maybe after, this year or two, when leaves, I think Donovan Wilson will kind of slide into that starting safety role opposite Xavier Woods. So I think they have 2 safeties for the future. Darian Thompson, former Giant, good enough to make the team as your 3rd or 4th safety. Don't love it. There's a lot of safeties on the market, so if they do decide to bring in another safety, I would not be surprised. But for right now, Darian Thompson makes the team. So this is just going to be a quick one. Special teams. Definitely my first cut. It was going to be of this, roster. I've been writing it down for a while. Definitely the tough decision was going to be whether it's Greg Zuerlein or Kai Forbath. I've always been a Greg Zuerlein guy. But for multiple years, I thought he was the best kicker in the NFL, maybe besides Justin Tucker. But didn't do as well last year, but I think it was great for them to bring him in because I was reading and it said that Kai Forbath made every kick for the Cowboys last year. So it's hard to let go of somebody like that, but they did actually already. I didn't have to make that decision. They did for me. So thank you, Cowboys, for making the kicking choice for this video so I didn't have to spend hours contemplating which kicker I wanted. So punter, Chris Jones, and long snapper, sorry, I can't pronounce that last name, but so they're just good. LP's a great long snapper. Then we have Chris Jones at punter. He's just kind of okay, I guess, as a punter. So now I'm going to transition here. So this is what you're going to see. So these are going to be players you didn't see earlier in the video that you may be saying, oh, why didn't you include that player in the, whatever position? Because this is why, once again, they're making it so you can have 16 players on the practice squad. So Clayton Thorson, he was on the Eagles. He is just meh. Honestly, they could bring in a better practice squad quarterback. Wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being cut. But for right now, he's their quarterback. I have Rico Dowdle at running back. It's either him or Darius Anderson. One gets cut, the other goes practice squad. Then at wide receiver, like I mentioned, Ventel Bryant, super good, but had some off-the-field concerns. So for right now, he's on the practice squad. And then this was kind of a difficult decision between Aaron Parker, who I liked coming out of Rhode Island this year, and Tevin Jones. So I ended up deciding that Aaron Parker would be the move because he's younger and maybe has some more potential. So I went with him, so now they have 2 wide receivers. Now, another tough decision here was cutting a tight end. I have them keeping Cole Hicatini, looking up. I thought maybe feels like he's been in the league for 3 or 4 years, but in fact he has only had 2 seasons of experience, so he made the practice squad. If you did not know, the practice squad rules is that you need at least 2 years, 2 years or lower. So at the most you can have is 2 years of NFL experience, basically a accrued season, as they call it, which is like, I think it's 6 games. So basically, you need to have been playing for 2 years consistently. So, for example, if you've only been in the league for 2 years or less, you're guaranteed you're eligible. But there could technically be a 5th-year guy only played 2 years. You can technically keep him. But with that being said, Cole Hikatini made it. Charlie, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. But I liked him coming out of South Dakota State this year. I believe that's where he came from. Or it might have been San Jose State, actually. It was one of the teams that was blue and yellow. So, but I liked him more than Sean McKeon out of Michigan, which is the other tight end. If I were to rank these 16 players, Sean would have made it, but I thought it doesn't really make sense for a team to keep 3 tight ends on their practice squad. So I ended up cutting Sean, but we kept Charlie here. Terrence Steele. Thought he was going to be a 4th-round pick, maybe a 5th-round pick. Ended up going undrafted. And before I remembered that Cam Erving was a Cowboy, I was going to put him on the roster. So if they decide to cut ties with Cam Erving, watch out for Terrence Steele to make the roster. Mitch Hyatt, the other tackle, guaranteed practice squad, in my opinion. Now we have the second page of practice squad, Marcus Henry. Same thing, felt like he was in the league for 3 years, but in fact he is eligible. So I kept him there so they have an interior lineman on the practice squad. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Dorrance Armstrong. I was coming out, if I remember correctly, I was kind of just I was above average on Dorrance Armstrong, but wasn't in love with him. I liked the value they got. Maybe thought it was a little high for him. He was relatively high. I think it was a 4th or 3rd round pick for him. And he just, unfortunately, has not amounted to much, to be honest. I would not be surprised if he ends up being maybe on a different team, active roster, if they just want to see his potential, but not very good for him. Now, I loved Jalen Jelks coming out of Oregon. Unfortunately, doesn't have much to show for it, so he didn't make it. Especially with, this is one of the most depth defensive lines in the NFL. Not too many, to be honest, super. I mean, they have DeMarcus Lawrence. Griffin's good. I mean, they have great starters, but I think Jalen Jelks just is kind of buried in the depth chart. So I have him staying here. Luke Gifford, watch out for him to make the roster. So you could see him make it if they decide to cut ties at a different position. So so definitely watch out for him. I liked Francis Bernard this year. I liked him a lot. Thought he was going to be drafted in maybe the 6th or 7th round, but he actually wasn't. So I have him sticking on the practice squad. Savion Smith, good enough to make the practice squad. Kind of disappointing. He was drafted by the Jags last year. They cut him. He's just kind of going to be there on the practice squad. Same with Chris Westry. Both are corners. And then I was going to keep somebody else, like a 3rd tight end on the roster, over Luther Kirk, because I'm not very high on Luther Kirk. But I think it's better on your practice squad, especially with the way everything is this year, to kind of kind of spread out the positions you have, so you're prepared when a guy goes down because of COVID or any other issue. So with that being said, those were the practice squad players, and now we're looking at the cuts. So the reason I cut Tyrone Crawford was because it actually saves them over $7 million if they cut him. So you might think that might be an off-season move. That could very well be a next off-season move. For me, I did it now. Because I feel this year there's still a lot of great players on the market compared to usual. So I ended up cutting Tyrone Crawford. Kind of surprising move, but I think it just saves them a lot of money. And I think it makes sense to do it. Randy Gregory, technically not a cut. You could say I put him under the cuts category because we're not keeping him on the team. But more so, he's just technically not on the roster or in the NFL. He's just on the suspension list. Noah Brown, was going to put him on the practice squad till I realized he wasn't eligible. Feels like I've been waiting for years for him to do something, so I thought he's only been in the league for 2 years. But he's already been for, according to the Cowboys website, he has 4 years experience. And I think it's just time for him to move on somewhere else. He's tried it here, just maybe special teams future. CJ Goodwin's a special teams player. Very underrated. I like him a lot, but just with them having 6 or 7 decent corners here, it's not really going to work. Adam Redmond, just an average lineman, so in my opinion, you can cut him. Justin Hamilton, same thing in our D tackle. Tevin Jones did play a little bit last year. Definitely has the potential to be somewhere else, maybe. But if he was practice squad eligible, I would have kept him. But he might be, actually, now that I remember. I think he was, so maybe a different practice squad. But I think you have to keep Aaron Parker over him on the practice squad. Then Cody Wichmann is just a guard. Deontay Burton, maybe a future in special teams, could be somewhere else. Like I said, Sean McKeon, I like him a lot. I think he'll definitely make the practice squad somewhere else, but you can't keep three tight ends on the practice squad on one team. So then you have Wyatt Miller at tackle, Rondell Carter and Ladarius Hamilton, not very high on either of them, and Isaac Alarcon, not high on him either this year. All, I believe, rookies. Weren't high on any of them coming out. So with that being said, that was it for the Cowboys one. If you're watching this on YouTube, kind of look forward. I should be doing more of that's what I'm kind of going to be uploading for the next little bit. I think that because it doesn't seem to me when YouTubers are doing it, it kind of seems like they're only doing their own team. Let's say they're a fan of whatever team, they do that one. But for me, I'm trying to be kind of neutral. I want to do it for as many teams as possible. Once again, as you can see on the screens, follow me on socials. One of my goals here is going to be expanding this podcast. Obviously, thank you for listening. If you're listening on audio or watching on video, the podcast is available on pretty much all platforms now. It's on Apple. So definitely looking for followers, too. I'm going to be trying to... Like I said, I've been trying, it's been a little unsuccessful, but trying to maybe get in contact with some NFL players, former ones at least, or former college players to see if I can get any guests on the show. But for now, we're just going to be going with what we got, but definitely looking for that in the future. So, thank you so much for listening or watching this edition of the Redzone Review Podcast.